Hello, everybody, and welcome to the episode number 47. In this episode, I had the honor to chat with the senior designer at Zaha Hadid Architects in London, Mariana Cabugueira. Mariana's journey was very interesting. She graduated at the University of Lisbon, with in between an exchange year at the Politecnico di Milano. And after a short professional experience in Portugal, she decided she needs to explore furthermore her design skills. And this is how she ended up at the AA School of Architecture in London, where she currently also teaches. The conversation was really inspiring, and I'm sure it's going to be inspiring for you too. But before we start, I want to thank you for the support so far and remind you that if you like what we do, if you like our show and what we can bring to you as informations, you can support us completely for free by just joining our monthly newsletter with the best of our show. The link is below. You just can click and subscribe. And also, you can follow us on our social media channels, which are Instagram at TCI Podcast and the LinkedIn page, The Creative Insider. Thank you very much and enjoy the conversation with Mariana Cabugueira.
Just like that. The whole world stops just like that.
Hello, Mariana. How are you doing?
Hi, Georgi. You're good? I'm fine.
First of all, thank you very much for accepting the invitation of our small but powerful podcast. It was nice. It was nice to find about you because we have had on the podcast Vamsi, which is the co-founder of Futurely. And then recently I saw on their Instagram that you were doing a workshop with them, and I got curious and I checked you on Instagram. And for me was very interesting because I was recently reading the book "This Is Marketing" of Seth Godin, and he says that you need to be polarizing to catch the attention of the people. And for me, the most polarizing thing was that I saw you are one of the head designer of Zaha Hadid Architects, but if you check your Instagram, it's like you're like a traveling blogger or something like that. So that was really fun. A little bit. Come on, I liked it. You don't look like the typical architect.
Yeah, I mean, not polarizing, but definitely multitasking. Especially, I think this year it was a very big lesson towards that multitasking, not doing just office work. And more than traveling, I do like I teach. I teach as much as I work for the office. I teach quite a lot. So I started to multitask this year like so much and zero traveling, as you can imagine. I think I traveled once or something. But yeah, definitely multitasking for my profession or whatever profession, I think it's really important. Really important.
Yeah, and kind of organize all these different tasks you're having on your plate. I've also like then researched a little bit you. I checked other interviews you have done with Blessed Architecture, Blessed Architect. I'm gonna put the link in the description of the podcast so that there is no like unhappy people afterwards. And in your story, it's quite interesting. But I'm always curious to ask because you can introduce a little bit yourselves for the audience, so if they don't know you, and then I'm going to start with my questions.
Okay, so Mariana, I am an architect from Lisbon. I graduated in Lisbon. I studied in Milano for 1 year as well. Then I did my master's of architecture in Lisbon. After that, because I was kind of scared I would get stuck in a traditional office in Portugal, and I realized that I'm not really typical Portuguese architect, I thought I'm going to travel. I'm going to look for something else. In this case, I looked for postgrad courses, and I ended doing DRL, which is Design Research Laboratory, at DAA, Architectural Association in London. And then I did 1 year and a half of post graduation at the Patrick Schumacher Studio. And when I finished the postgrad, Patrick Schumacher recommended me to the office, and then I did my interview, and I have been working for the office for the last 4 years as an architectural designer. I do competitions for the last 4 years at Zaha. So that's what I do.
That, that sounds very intensive. It was a great sum up, but I'm gonna start from the very first point where, if there was one very first point of your life where you realized you wanted to become a designer or an architect, because everybody of the guests have like different stories. So, what is yours?
Okay. So when I was really young, when I was like around 3 or 2, I wanted to paint walls. I was actually painting my house walls, like doing all the doodles and all the drawings during the night. Then I would get in trouble because, of course, like my parents would get super angry at me. So I started just like drawing on normal paper, and I wanted to be a painter, and I wanted to paint walls mainly. And then when I grew up, when I was 7, my parents kind of talked me into being an architect. They said architects can also like paint walls, which is a lie because you don't paint any walls. But I was like, okay, that's a nice trade-off, because they were kind of scared that I would get into construction or something. So I said, okay, sounds interesting. So I decided I'm going to be an architect since I was 7, and then on the side I'll be a painter. And then that was kind of good because it set a very specific goal. It's not a recipe. I don't think people have to know what they want to be when they grow up necessarily, but in my case, you said like the goal was very precise. So I was not losing myself on anything else. I was really just, okay, I want to be an architect. What does an architect do? What kind of marks do I need to have? So I was kind of very focused on it. And yeah, so when I was 18, I got in the architectural school. And it was a completely different adventure when I was an architect student, completely different than I thought, which is kind of interesting. And then I started diverting a little bit to design of architecture. So now I'm an architectural designer more than.
Completely different in which way? Well,
Uh,
because yeah,
so
that's curious.
it's interesting when you think you're going to be an architect. The first thing you think is buildings, right? And it's very much driven to exterior architecture, right? When you say architect, you think about boxes and buildings. And when you start the architectural school, you understand that there is a lot more than that in the profession. There is this kind of poetics behind. There is like the light, there is shadow, there is culture of living, there is anthropology, there is a lot more. There's culture, especially. So there is a lot more than just putting buildings on, like an engineer putting buildings on top of the earth, right? So that was like a big surprise when I did the School of Architecture in a positive way. There is a lot more in architecture than just putting materials on the floor and putting doors and windows. So yeah, it was a nice surprise in the school.
And yeah, from, as I said, from the video I've saw already about a little bit about your life, it was a little short sort of sum up. You can see, because there were like sliding pictures of your student career, and you were saying that you've been always. I'm not sure if you said you've been always the only one, but you said that you've been always in the university, kind of living in the university. Uh, so I guess that you've been always very very motivated and very very like highly,
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know how to say, motivated, I guess, to do
Hmm.
this work.
I think so. You know what? Like, I think that because I was not really good at explaining what I wanted to do verbally. Actually, I started talking really late and drawing really early. So I kind of felt that in order to explain myself or my ideas, I had to work to show them, because I definitely could not explain them like verbally. So that kind of makes you work double, or I didn't see it as work, but make you put more hours into something in order to explain exactly what you think, or what you think is, or what your ideas are. So when I look back, I kind of see myself trying really hard to show exactly what I wanted and what I felt it was right. So maybe, yeah, I think I was working 2 times or 3 times more, not because I wanted to have the highest marks. I never really cared about marks, or not because I wanted to be the best of my class. It was like because I wanted to explain what I was doing, because I wanted to explain my ideas. So that's also why I was spending more time in the basement, in the school basement, doing my projects and my little things. But yeah, that was this 24-hour basement in our school. And then there was like this small room next to it with a door to the exterior. And then I kind of took that small room for myself, and I was living there like a worm. And people would make jokes, but it was my tiny space in the school for myself.
I think that everybody have had similar experiences in the School of Architecture. I studied in Rome, and
Hmm.
there we had also a sort of a basement where you could work with a lot of students. But
Yeah.
I couldn't fit in the environment in Rome. I don't know. I didn't have so many close. I knew everybody because I'm very communicative. I mean, I reach out strangers to
Yeah.
interview them, but and then I came into Germany, where I'm currently based. And here, as Erasmus student, we had this room where you could access 24/7 with a card. And we created there an international Erasmus community where we'd spend really nights and days. And we had also a little kitchen, so it
Yeah,
was perfect.
exactly. Yeah.
And then we had this moment. I once slept on the floor because was there for 5 days and I was too tired without sleeping. And one girl put a blanket on me, and
Yeah.
I woke up and I found this blanket, and I asked my friends, where is this blanket from? And they told me which person gave me this blanket. I was like, oh, that
Yeah.
person will be forever in my heart. So I know that. I know
Yeah.
that. But how
Been
was
there. Yeah.
sorry, yeah, no.
I've been
But how
there.
was it?
Definitely. I don't think I used the blanket. I think that was the time I was so cold, and it was me and a friend of mine sleeping on the floor. That I was kind all going on all the rooms of the school, and it was at night looking for papers or looking for something, and I found like newspapers. So we were like wrapped around newspapers, and I thought like, okay, this will keep me warm at night, and we slept as well 3 hours. But for example, in this basement, like the memories that I have of it like a continuous of me working, even like with no timeline, just working. Then people would come in the morning and say like hi, and then grab a chair, and people would like sit there while I was working and talk and like about their problems, and they will leave, and then someone else would come and bring a chair, like a super, almost like a movie. Like, and I never stopped working. Then they would just come and like chat and chat and chat and then leave, and then another one would come and then leave.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. That's a good analogy. A movie.
Yeah.
Um, and how was your relationship with the Portuguese students and professors? How was the environment in your university where you studied in Portugal?
So when I joined the school, I actually joined interiors, like the interiors department, because the mark was really really high, to actually get in architectures, and I was like 1 or 2 points lower decims, like so I was a bit sad about it, but it was fine. I joined the interiors department, and people from interiors, they were really cool. They were my actual friends for my whole time that I was in school, and some of them I still keep them. And then I moved to architecture 1 year later, and in architecture, people were a little bit different than me. They were like a little bit more like introverts, I think. So I was like, I was closer to the friends I did in interiors. They were like cooler, and they were more like party, but not superficial people, still very deep and still very much into architecture, but still living life in a lighter way. So I was having classes with architecture and then spend my the whole time with my interior friends. And of course, I did some friends with the architecture department, but for some reason, there was this culture of a bit. There was more competition, or I don't know. I think that emotionally they were a little bit less evolved. I think they would still hide stuff from each other, or they wouldn't sign for you on the classes, this kind of thing. So we were good colleagues, but my friends were from the interiors department.
Yes, I am asking you because yeah, I had the same experience in Italy, and that's why I didn't fit in because the University of Rome, it's in the very city center of the city. In if you're aware, if you're aware with Rome, it's not far away from the Maxi Museum, so it's a very like central part, and a lot of the people also come from the surroundings. So they're little, only high class family are in that area, so they would
Mm.
be a little bit more self aware, so to say. And I was coming from the suburbs. I was coming from very actually a little bit out of Rome, and I I didn't fit. I didn't completely fit in.
Yeah.
And when I moved to Frankfurt, it was a completely different environment because it's actually a University of Applied Sciences, which is a more practical school. It's like for not the best students, which don't make it to the university, and they
Okay.
go. But it's that's the theory. But it was a great university here. And you mentioned you've been to Milano too. So how did that develop? How at which point you did
So
this?
when I applied to Erasmus, Milano was not like the hardest school to get in. I think it was like in seventh place or something like that. So my mark, you are placed in the city, in a specific city according to your mark. So at that time, I couldn't go to the number one, which was Barcelona. I was fine, to be honest. I was not really attached to marks, and I don't think anyone should be to evaluation. So I was doing my thing. So when I knew I joined, I got in Milano. I grabbed one of my best friends at that time, and we decided let's go together. Let's do this together. And it's funny because when I applied to Erasmus, I had the first feeling I had was now I am completely free to do the kind of architecture that I want. And it's this feeling that I still like. It's very palpable even now. I remember this freedom of no one knows me, no one has any expectation of me. I'm going to do exactly what I feel that a project should be. So when I got in the Italian school, they were obviously like my school, like very much like modernists and tied to Le Corbusier and all that. And I thought like no one knows anything about me. So I did like crazy, crazy stuff, like crazy projects. I even remember when you do these crazy things, people either think you're crazy or you're a genius. And I was lucky that they said it. She's a genius. She's a genius. I remember this professor showing my stuff. Look at this geniality, and it's nothing. It's just someone who said, "Now I can be whatever. Now I can do whatever." So that was the only difference. And I used the Erasmus excuse many times. I said, "Yeah, but in my country we do it like this." You know. So
That's a classic.
yeah, it's a classic. So I was like, so they wouldn't think that I'm crazy. In the end, because when you do very complex projects, you also get a lot of extra work. So in the end, I ended working a lot more than doing Erasmus. I was working like hardcore, but at least I did the kind of projects that I wanted. So that was my experience at the Politecnico in Milano. And it was a super cool school. Right now, I think it's ranked like one of the best schools of architecture to get in. Yeah,
Yes, it's definitely one of the top. I think in top 10 for sure.
yeah,
But yeah, and with Erasmus, you have of course the opportunity to go abroad and be unknown
yeah.
from teachers. And of course it's also a lot of like people go for a lot of party and experience with other people. But I have also, for example, as you said, noticed that you have this creative freedom, because also the professors from the abroad university, I had the feeling they tried less to influence you, because they think, okay, she's going to be
Exactly.
here 1 year, so
Yeah.
she's not like my student, but not really. So
Yeah.
they give you, and they like, especially in Italy, it was like this, and in Germany too, professors are like, I'm not gonna like, you're gonna pass anyways, because they don't want to make troubles, because
Yeah.
if you don't pass, it's a big trouble. So
Hmm.
it's nice experience if you do it in a positive way, as you did. And how was to go back then to Portugal after you have had this, I guess, year? How long have you
Yeah.
stayed in Milan,
And
and
one
where you
year.
could,
Yeah, 1 year.
and going back where you need to adapt again? How
I
was that?
know. And it's not just that. I left Milan like with this huge confidence, like now I know who I am and now I know my identity. And then when I got back, it was like, oof, another slap in the face. Like, no, no, no curves, no curvy buildings, 90 degrees. And it was actually one of the toughest years in my school, the last year. But it was fine. I managed.
And after you graduated this master in Portugal, how did you how did you make this transition, which is very crucial, to move from
Hmm.
school to, I don't know, professional world, and then to decide what you're going to do next?
Hmm. Yeah. It's kind of a weird jump, right? From finishing your school, your university, and what do you do after? It's a super weird jump. And I even have a feeling that we don't have enough support for that jump, right? So, one of the things that I'm trying to do right now is to kind of mitigate this gap between students and professionals. And that's why I am a very outspoken person, so I try to spread my word as much as I can in order to make this jump uh, seem smaller. So students see professionals that are young, and it kind of mitigates the step. So when I finished, it was not I was not very happy. It was a super hard final presentation. When the judge wanted to fail me, the other judge wanted to give me the highest score. So it was very controversial. And one thing I was very, very certain, I knew that I could not get myself into a traditional office in Portugal because that would kill my creativity. And I know it sounds like a diva kind of thing, but it's not. I think everyone should be allowed to not to be stuck and to push your creativity as much as you can till whenever you want. The world is huge. You don't need to stay in your little country. But of course, you don't think like this at that time. You just feel a little bit of fear, especially because everyone when they do the same thing, right? Everyone finishes their master and they join an office. They do internship for a year and then they move to another office or they stay. Everyone does this. So when you're feeling that you're doing something different, you kind of wonder, is it okay to be doing something different? Am I risking something that it's stupid, you know? So I just made up my mind. I just decided I have to find something else. I'm not going to do internship, and I haven't done internship yet, and it's been like 7 years, and I haven't done internship. So I decided, no, I'm not gonna join any office. I'm not gonna do internship. Like I need to look for something else. It was really like a visceral kind of need. So I joined a tiny office that kind of embraced me under the table, nothing official, and I was just like taking care of my portfolio and working for them and having a bit of a good time. And then I applied to the architectural association. I went to the open day. One day I decided, okay, there's the open day of this school. I'm gonna go to this open day. I went, and it was the final presentations of the DRL, and that's when I realized, okay, I think everything I have been thinking and everything I have been doing makes sense here in another country. So I think it's time for me to move, regardless of being, I don't know, an immigrant, or regardless of this fear of moving countries. It was really not about that. It was just, I fit better there. I think it's better if I go there, without thinking about, am I moving countries? It was more like I fit there. It's there.
But I have a question on the side because I've got to know about the AA when I was already in high school because I did a high school of arts in Rome, and my
Ah.
teachers, some of them were architects,
Hmm.
and they were telling us because we had sort of architectural classes because my studies were already in high school with a little bit of architecture. And I'm curious because I know that it's a kind of expensive school and masters to do.
Yeah.
Did you manage to get some scholarship, or did you need to take a loan, or did your family manage to support you?
Mm.
Um, I'm asking just for the matter because it's called a creative insider, so we get like really insider information to
No, I
know.
think it's good you're asking. Feel free to ask anything related to what you think is controversial or uncomfortable.
No, it's not about being uncomfortable, but I always put myself, I come from a family which was very like practical, like
Yeah.
get quick through this, find a job because it was never like with
Yeah.
plenty of resources, and people might think, yeah, that's nice to go to AA, but how do you do it? So that was
Hmm.
just my idea to ask you this.
I'm gonna be very honest. I think I was pretty. When I look back, I think I was privileged to have it. I kind of tried to get the. I tried to get like some aid from my school, and they didn't have any help. And then they told me, under very extraordinary circumstances, we can pay you a scholarship. So it was like a no go. I think I don't know. I would most likely not have both legs, and maybe they gave me the scholarship. So I kind of had to go on the traditional way. And when I look back, I really think that I'm only here because my parents really did an investment. They didn't tell me we are investing on you, but I'm pretty sure that they had this conversation alone, and they decided, let's invest this money on this course and let's see what she does with it. They never gave me this pressure, but they did pay the full amount, which is insane. It makes no sense. Plus the money that you have to spend when you're doing the course to 3D print stuff, to all the softwares. Like, it's a lot of money. To the London rent, it is a lot of money. And I'm very happy that other courses are jumping in, a lot cheaper courses covering more or less the same topic. So I teach at DAA right now, but I think I'm super comfortable to say, if you cannot afford DRL, look for good alternatives, and they are actually super good alternatives, like Bartlett, the B Pro inside of Bartlett, some UCL masters and postgrad. So there are other ways, thank God. And then another good thing that is happening is people who left the DRL are also teaching online. Um, so they're bringing the knowledge that you're getting inside of DRL out and spreading them a little bit for cheaper prices outside, which I think is really important. Of course, it's better when you actually do the DRL because you have the connections. You have Patrick as a connection as well, and you deal with some very good tutors as well. But it's good that we are kind of spreading this and making this a little bit more reachable to a wider audience. But my parents did this investment on me. I clearly understood, okay, this is a huge investment, and I felt I have to succeed on this. So that's also one of the reasons why I was so focused on doing well and getting into Zaha after, because that would make the investment worth. So yeah, but it's crazy expensive. Crazy, crazy.
And I get that, but I mean that sounded like the perfect
Yeah.
closing of the circle because you started having this passion painting the home walls when you were a kid, and then they
Yeah.
instilled in you the idea with, so it's kind of a little bit also their fault. uh, but how it's to because also you, I guess you have to apply to get a spot, because I guess that if you are applying into one what is considered the
Mhm.
school of architecture in the world, there are a limited amount of spots, I guess.
Mhm.
how is this process like? What do you
Yeah.
do to apply?
So I was a bit scared about that because I saw that on their final presentation that they were relying so much on 3D and on renders and a lot of visualization, and I was doing AutoCAD. So I was kind of, I'm gonna apply with my portfolio, but I'm not going. I thought there's very low chances I might get in. So they usually receive like 300 or 200 applications, and then they get like 30 or 40 people. And I applied with my portfolio, which at that time it was not really a portfolio. I just did the best I could with my final master thesis. I covered all the topics with my master thesis, and I was like, fingers crossed. They picked me. I was calling the school every other week to know, did I get in? Did I get in? And then I got in, and I honestly, I think that for the first 6 months, I felt like I was the last person they admitted. I know this is crazy, and you should never think like that, but everyone had such good preparation regarding 3D and visualizing, and I was like a bit more traditional because I was Portuguese and I was not necessarily very robotic driven, or generative design kind of driven. So I always felt, okay, I was probably the last one they admitted. And then, of course, with time, I understood that I was better than I thought.
No, you called them too many times, so they were like, let's stop her calling. They just admit her.
they're like,
So,
they're like, can you do 40 instead of 39? And they're like, okay.
but you said you needed to cover some topics. Did they require a portfolio that covers different
No, no,
subjects,
no,
or you just
no,
took
no.
your
Yeah.
thesis and sort of create a portfolio out of it? If you want, we can do. For example, I have had Lucian Rakovitan. He was a former employee at Big, and he was also a very funny guy because he also applied at Björk Ingels Group with just some collage, and he got the job. And he also was like, hey, and I applied at Big, and they hired me, and was okay. And
Yeah.
then he sent me his first portfolio, and we put it on Instagram. So a
Yeah.
motivational post. So if you have that portfolio and you want to share, we can do something about
Okay.
it. Think about it.
Yeah.
And okay, and you started at the AA. From what I know, like I think that what you said, you had to spend also a lot of extra money on other side things, but
Mhm.
I thought that AA gives you a lot of infrastructure, 3D printers, software, or no, you have to get that
Yeah.
on you.
Yeah, but I think at that time we had like I don't know, like 10 3D printers for the whole school. So it was most of the time super booked. So even if you could get like a machine, let's say a small piece of 20 centimeters high would take like 1 day to print, and they want you to fill like tables and tables of prints. So that means that you have to be printing 24 hours every day. So we had to buy a 3D printer. They would
Mhm.
tell you, like, if the director of the DRL was listening, he would say, yeah, but you don't need to 3D print every day, but you do. You actually do.
Yeah, because you
Yeah.
do, because they're overbooked.
Yeah.
And who were your teachers? How long was the course? What did they teach you that was so much different than the other schools?
hmm
I'm
So,
curious.
you
Here,
know,
I don't know what to ask. Just go
yeah,
rant.
yeah, yeah. So the first thing that you see when you look at DRL stuff is the graphics are impressive, like super impressive. The graphics and the 3Ds are very impressive, and the simulations are very impressive. They teach you all of this in the first 6 months. So you join, and you have at least like 6 different softwares with mandatory classes. So 6 months with mandatory software classes, from coding to any simulation software uh, to crowd simulation, and then particle simulation. Then you have the traditional 3D softwares like Maya, not so traditional, but Maya, Rhino, Grasshopper. All of these 6 months, super super intense software kind of slap in the face. At the same time, you're doing like workshops to put in practice these softwares, okay? And then after these 6 months, this period stops, and you have to pick a studio, which will be your final thesis. and you have 1 year for this studio. You have to pick teammates, like groups of 3 or 4. And right now we have like three. Right now we have 3 studios. One studio which is from the director of the course, Theodoros Spyropoulos, and he does a bit more like prototyping, single units, assembling units, very robotic, but without using a robotic arm. You know what I mean? So that's a little bit the course that is further away from the architectural discourse. And then you have Sajay Bhushan and Alicia, and they are doing a bit more like robotic fabrication. So pieces, assembling pieces in order to create architectural elements. So it's a bit more architectural, but it's very much tied to robotic fabrication. You deal with robotic arms, with a lot of coding to control the robotic arms, and a lot of modeling towards I don't know, minimal surfaces or complex geometry that can be assembled by a robotic arm. So it's a bit more robotic. And then there's a third studio, which is Patrick Schumacher's studio, the studio that I did. That is a lot more architectural, closer to the Zaha office, process-wise. So you have a site, you have a brief, you generate the urban flow, and then you start modeling that. And in my case, I did towers in London, and then you model the towers. Um, of course, all of this has to come from a generative process. So in order to get a generative process, you need to learn softwares that are generative, like the Grasshopper. What the DRL brings you that is different from the other schools is parametric design, which is something that Patrick kind of holds a patent on. Parametric design, generative design, digital design, and everything that kind of uses a software as an aid for you to achieve a certain design. Okay, so softwares are really, really important in these courses. And yeah, completely different from our normal school, right? Since when software aids design in a traditional school? Never, right? Software is like a documentation kind of tool in the conventional school.
But I'm curious, did they teach you also some different way of, because I mean you have to think a little bit different, I guess, when you put in your hands with this tool, because the designs that come out of those laboratories and of also of Zaha Hadid Architects, they look so much different than what you see around. You know, like for example, I had the pleasure to experience, you know, Maxi Museum when it was opened. When I went there, I think it was my first semester of architecture or something like that. So my and I went with my dad, who has nothing to do with architecture, but we were so impressed by just the flow
Yeah.
of us inside the building was
Yeah.
really it's so fluid also. It has like
Mm-hmm.
these stripes where you can go in every direction and you kind of go through no matter where you start. So I was thinking, do you get also some different mindset to approach design there?
You do, of course, you get this the generative kind of way to think about of architecture, but you know what? I think that this fluidity in design is not a way of thinking. They never told me to be fluid when I was doing design, but when you really start trying to tie human behavior, human flow, whenever you do anything about flow, people flowing, nature, I think that the most obvious conclusion from this is fluid forms. I think that the traditional forms that we do, the 90 degrees forms and this rigid kind of box that we do in architecture is an imposition of human practice in space. You know, it's not the natural course of architecture. I don't think that if we were all allowed to do the natural course of architecture, I don't think it would be 90 degrees. I think we do it because of budget, because of construction methods. It is less natural than the fluid space, and it's more of an imposition than the fluid space. So when you are allowed, and not just allowed, when they kind of make you actually take human behavior into architectural, I think it's more than natural that your forms become fluid. You stop thinking about architects as these gods of artificial spaces that land a box on a street. You really take flow into place. And I think that even like the comfort feeling that someone has inside of a space, most likely your comfort would come from fluid interior spaces more than the sharp corners that we have around us. And if they don't use budget as a constraint, I think that our natural gut will go into fluid architecture and organic architecture. It's not like a style. I think it's
Yes.
just a natural way of things.
But I think the future will be more of that also because now we are starting seeing more and more projects or experimental projects with also, that the robots that build the houses with
Yeah,
all the project they're doing now for Mars. It's funny because I was watching also on Netflix that last movie with George Clooney. It come out like around Christmas,
it was
and
so cool. Yeah,
it was a lot of that in that movie
yeah,
because you could see all their environment, all their objects, where even you could see his rifle was with this 3D printed shape, which will be the future of
yeah.
saving materials also. So I think this will be when technology will get affordable, that you can build this en masse.
I
I think
agree.
that
Yeah.
that will be very interesting.
You know what
And
was like my biggest disappointment when I was at the DRL school? Like after some time, you really get into technology and into robotic fabrication and into like a different way of imagining space. And after some time, like I say, let's say a year, you think, okay, why don't we do this now? Why is this not real? And then you realize that there is a huge gap between speculation and digital speculation and robotic speculation and technology speculation and reality, because we are still assembling bricks, and that's the reality. As much as you think about Mars, about these crazy houses, reality is we are still on site assembling bricks manually. And that was like, I think that was the huge disappointment I had when I was doing DRL. It's like, this is all just speculations because we are so far away from the real technology advances.
yeah, and also I think that we have to develop further a little bit the robots that build that
Yeah,
stuff.
as well. Yeah,
Be- because I've been also here with my school in Frankfurt. We went to visit in Stuttgart. They have also an institute that builds every year a pavilion. If I don't, probably you're aware, they do
yeah,
these
of course I
pavilions
do.
with
Yeah,
they like with the wires. So they had this pavilion which was simulating a bridge, and they said that it was built with drones. If you read the articles, they say drones were pulling around the strings.
yeah,
But when we were there, they said, yeah, we started with the drones, but it's they didn't have this power to do it all the
yeah,
time.
yeah.
So part of it they did manually, but the drones.
Really, exactly. But that's exactly the kind of disappointment we had on DRL. Like we also did a lot of drones kind of thing, and then it was like, yeah, but then reality is drones need to put battery back, and then they waste so much battery. So manual work is still more profitable. Yeah,
Yes, yes. I think we need to figure out that stuff, and then it's gonna be more
yeah,
more massive. But I think it's gonna get a little bit of time still. It's getting there probably now. It's moving further on.
yeah,
Um,
hopefully.
but what it got me curious, what you said before, is that you needed to do your final project with other two people, right?
Yeah,
How is it to put on like sort of gamble your final project with
and
two people?
gamble.
Because I know how it is to work like in groups at the university.
Yeah,
And I think that the problem, I get what is the point. The point is that you're gonna work in a team in your profession. It's impossible. Like generally, you don't work alone, and you have to learn to work with other people. But the problem in the university is that there is no structure, hierarchy, or the same motivation. I guess at the AA there is high motivation, but still you never know. So how was that experience? Did you manage to have good
So you know what
thing?
I told like the younger people who joined after me. They said, "Ah, it's so hard the final thesis and the project." And I said, "You know what's really hard about the DRL? It's a social experiment. The hardest part about this project is getting your team in sync, because this is not just one final project; it's a whole research. So you all need to agree on your research." And I think it was a social experiment for me, 100%. So I teamed up with very strong people. One guy from Bogota, Juan Carlos, one guy from Chile, Nicolas Tornero, and me. And we are more or less from the same generation. I would be fighting, not fighting, but arguing with Juan Carlos. Like every time we had a subject, we would completely disagree, but not in a bad way, like not in a vicious way. We would just like argue and counter back and argue and counter back, and we would spend hours just arguing about, I don't know, whatever, like between Le Corbusier or Philip Johnson, like this kind of discourses. uh, in the end, I think it worked well. Of course, some people work more than other people in the team, and after some time you realize who does what better. So I was better at coordinating the team and making sure that everything was done, and um, organizing the final elements. It's really important that someone is like looking at it, organizing stuff. Basically, I was doing a lot of work, of course, but in my head I was like, I know exactly what needs to be done. I know exactly what this person needs to give me, that person needs to give me, and this needs to be shown like this, like the overall vision. And then there was another guy who was modeling really well, and then Juan was kind of doing some other modeling on the side and render. So after you realize who does what and who is good at doing what, everything comes together. Until then, you're kind of fighting for what spot you should be on and who should be doing what. But it was super challenging. I think it was more challenging than the actual project.
Now that you mentioned you had two male teammates, is there any, do they try to keep some sort of mixture of male or female to just get the best, or how was the division? Because this is now a very, very,
Yeah.
actual topic about gender equality,
Hmm.
women, and I don't know. I have different opinions about the topic, but I think also about sometimes about the guests of the podcast. I think, okay,
Hmm.
we have only guys, but it's not on purpose. Like we don't have only guys, but we have most guys, because just don't doesn't happen that I found girls. If I found you and I think you're good, and I invite whoever is good. So
Yeah.
and I wanted to also know your opinion. Your and
That's
whoever
tough.
case,
Don't ask me that. That's gonna be a tough answer.
no,
No,
it's
but
you.
on DRL it was very organic. No one was thinking about it, and I also have a feeling that DRL was not very gender driven. No one was really thinking about the gender. I don't even
Mm,
remember how many women or men we had. It was more like, why? I think because everyone was coming from their own countries, and for the same time gathering with so many different people, we were more like, who is from where? Like I
mm.
represent Portugal, you represent Bogota, you represent Chile, you represent. So it was more like culturally divided and segregated than actually gender thing, because the biggest impact was your culture. So I joined Juan and Nico. I actually gathered them together. I put them together. I did the team, and so no one did the team. I spoke with Juan and we said, okay, let's team up and let's bring someone else. And I said, Nico is good. Let's bring Nico. So it was not forced. It was organic.
But in general, what is your opinion? Like, because my personal opinion is that, uh, I mean, you are working in one of the top of the chain offices in the
Mm-hmm.
world,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you do because you're good and you're
Mm-hmm.
prepared for sure. And but not every girl gonna be prepared, or me that I'm a guy, I'm not gonna be able to do your job because I'm just not able of doing it.
Yeah.
So my personal opinion, like if you have ever experienced in your career any, like, I don't know, did you feel ever that you have been, I don't know, put in the back because you're a girl, or no? You
I think
personal,
it's a very tough question that you're doing this,
you
because
said
you're
you said
speaking with a person that I'm
you said
this
I'm gonna, I
subject.
have to
Yeah,
be
yeah, yeah.
tough.
I know. I knew it would come, but I'm gonna be very honest. I'm very political in my opinions because I understood that I have to be political. Nevertheless, I'm very outspoken. This subject, I'm not political at all. I'm very hardcore on this subject, but it's good that, for example, my boyfriend or my family, it's the only subject that they try to calm me down and to see it's not gender based, it's not gender based. For me, I'm kind of this kind of person that thinks that a lot of things are gender based. I see it. And for example, you said how many people went into your podcast. I do it naturally. I know how many people you have, how many women versus men you have on your podcast. I always pay attention to that. Or on talks, Instagram talks, I know who does more men and who does more women. It's actually like a subject that has been pissing me off quite a bit. Some people actually just interview men, and I really don't understand why. And then I understood why. But or workshops or whole classes like the B Pro, these guys don't have one single woman like teaching. I always pay attention to this, to be honest. Yeah, it's unconscious. I don't do it even on purpose. But if I'm on a meeting, I know how many women are there. If I'm working on a project, I know how many women are there, and I do it unconscious. It's unconscious, but I do it. I think that maybe a lot of women do it as well. I don't think I was put back in the back because I'm a woman, because I have a strong character and I have a strong personality, so that usually outshadows the fact that I'm women or men. It's very personality based. I do think that men trust men for one very simple reason. I think that we all know that men have a difficulty of understanding women. I don't think it's just women. I think it's a little bit whatever is a bit different than them. Even these conversations that we have been having about non-binary world, the transgender, the cis men, the cis woman. I think that men have a bit less flexibility to understand something that is different than them, which I don't think is necessarily their fault, because the world kind of told you that it's okay because you are the most powerful one. You don't need to make that flexibility. You don't need to see anything else that's different than you because you're already the powerful one. So it's kind of a lazy attitude. It obviously depends on your culture, obviously depends on your family. For example, my boyfriend definitely not like that. It really depends on who raised you as well. But men are still, in general, very stereotypical idea, very lazy about understanding something else that's different than them. And that obviously brings some confidence and trust issues. Like, why would you trust something that you think it's unpredictable? Or why would you trust something that you don't understand? You know what I mean? So in office, in work, in whatever, in society, I feel that I'm going to tell you my idea, but it doesn't mean that you are going to trust me. You're not going to trust that this is the best way to move forward, because you're still like, you are unpredictable. I'm not sure how you think. You know what I mean? So in a way, I still think, and I always think, that I'm going to tell my idea. I'm going to say exactly what I think. I know that you're going to be a little bit suspicious about it. And this still happens. But I think it's logical. It's just,
I can tell you as a guy that I've been working with, of course, with women. I have had different bosses which were women, and I have also colleagues on my same level which are women. And generally, personally, when I'm at work, I don't care at all who I have in front of me,
yeah.
and I really like if there is the better idea, and if it comes from a girl or from whoever, I'm fine with it.
Hmm.
I cannot say that for every guy. I can see that sometimes there are some, maybe there is this prejudice or whatever you want to call it. In my
Yeah.
case, I come from a family of immigrants, so I have experienced myself this mistrust of the unknown, so to say, because I was
Exactly.
the exterior element at some point in my life. And I really don't I really don't think in that form, as you said. And I
Yeah.
really appreciate the best idea, and really on professional level, that's not a factor for me. But and I think I'm a big promoter of equal opportunities, equal
Hmm.
treatment, equal payment in the same role. Uh, because,
Hmm.
but I also think that nowadays there is too much polarization. I've heard recently another
I agree.
podcast which because now there is this gender fluidity and a lot of
Hmm.
I don't know how I don't know which were the it was an interview of actually a woman, a black woman, which I don't remember her name. She's a former Dutch politician. She's a Somali refugee, and she's a author, and she was also under protection because she did a movie about Islam, and some terrorist
Oof.
organization want to kill her, and they killed the actually the other guy who did the film with her, and they put her into protection. And now she's cancelled because she's opposing the idea that women should be called women and not people who menstruate. So I think that if there's these things which are positive, talking about
Uh-huh.
having same opportunities,
Yeah.
um, being taking serious, if they put like if they gonna get in a different level extremized, then people have two choices, whether one extremism which is this one, or
Yeah.
Trump, and they don't have like no middle of
Yeah.
range. So I think this is a little problematic currently.
I
But
agree, and to be honest, I think that even like the typical stereotypical white privileged men in the patriarchy world will have to be more flexible to something more than is this women or men. I know, you know what I mean. I think we are talking about other stuff that are equally important, which is the in between women and men. It's not binary now. We are understanding that there are people who are not women and men. They are in between, and they are free to be in between as long as they don't harm anyone, or as long as no one harms anyone. You need to recognize yourself as in the way that you feel more comfortable and happy about. So I think these typical men will actually need to understand there's something else than women and men, and to understand that things will have to be more flexible and more tolerant to differences.
I agree with you. I think just this changing language, it's something that scares
Yeah,
moderate people
I
and
agree.
turns them into something like, for example, me personally, I'm very moderate. As I said, I don't and I also don't feel like white male, privileged white male, because I come from Bulgaria.
Yeah.
So we have a joke. We say we're the only white people that are not very white because of the history of the country. But yeah, so I wanted to ask you this because it's going around a lot, and I don't have the opportunity to talk
It's
to
important. Yeah.
a lot of women, if you allow me to
Yeah.
say, in your position, because you're clearly someone that has I don't want to say success, because that's very relative, but you're
Yeah.
accomplished. Like you can say you're happy with what you do, and you
Hmm.
you do what
Hmm.
you love. But now let's go back on the on the less polarizing topics.
I knew this would come.
I
Yeah.
think it's nice to talk about
It's
it.
important, to be
It's
honest.
important to
Yeah.
talk about it and exchange opinions, and it's also I also think that before, in the past, intellectuals, artists, authors were the one that were setting some trends. They were having these dialogues and discussions, and I think that podcasting is one of the modern way to do it. Like
Yeah, I
we
agree.
don't sit anymore with the wine in a. Well, now we don't sit in a bar anyways because they're closed. But it's a way to set up a conversation that can reach a lot of people, and
Hmm.
then they can ask. I don't say that there is one opinion that's right or wrong. I'm also promoting dialogue.
Hmm.
People should talk. um, and so you finish the project with this two other Latinos,
Latinos.
the Latino team.
We had a fight about the Latinos even. Because we did Latin, like our country actually made up Latin, and but they are the Latinos, and I couldn't get the word Latina because that would be appropriation. We had this huge
Wait
argument.
a second, I come from Italy. They invent the Latin language in
They
Rome.
invented exactly. So you are the Latins. That's exactly what I was telling them. Like, no, you did the appropriation. They were like, no, we are the real Latins because we are South Americans. Oof.
uh, and afterwards, you said you did also a postgraduate, something like that. Like after you finished this. So
No,
first of all,
the RL
how was
was
the
the postgrad.
presentation?
It was the
Was it
postgrad.
was it successful? This project you
Uh,
did.
I would say, to be very honest with you, I think it was average.
Average. Well, average.
I think
Yeah.
so. I think so. Like in my opinion, it was a bit. Afterwards, I saw Patrick actually presenting our project in Princeton, so it's not that average. Okay, he was presenting our stuff to Princeton School, but when I did it, like, and when you look at the order of who presented, we were in the middle, so it was a bit like,
You're
a
at
little bit.
mid-level Princeton. I can.
Exactly.
I don't know. I don't like to idealize those institutions somehow because I think it's.
Me neither. Yeah.
Uh, you're a person. I'm talking to you, having this conversation. So
Yeah,
everybody that
I think
has a
so as well.
talent can make it. And then I guess that you have had created. You said yourself this good connection with Patrick Schumacher, and from there on you got to get the interview with with the office to get
Yeah,
in the part.
it was not like a good connection with Patrick because it's actually hard to get the connection with Patrick. He's a very busy person. But there was actually a moment one day after I presented, or the day I presented, that I had to have the courage to come next to him and to say, Patrick, do you think I can give you my portfolio and you can get me an interview? It was like a super hard moment. You know, these moments when you feel that you jump to the pool and you're like, okay, I jumped. I
How
have
was
to
his
do it.
reaction?
He said no. He said, we are not hired. And I was like, oh my God,
Really?
this was awful. I thought this was a terrible experience. Yeah, but then a couple of days later, he said he actually asked his assistant to email me and to ask me for my stuff with one of the directors of Zaha on CC. So I think he was just not in the good time when I asked him. Yeah.
But the stuff that you send as a portfolio for Zaha Hadid Architects was everything made in during this 1.5 year at the AA,
Yeah,
or
it
were
was.
there also works before? What did it make
Um,
any sense to send something?
I just sent, like, it was also again not a traditional portfolio. I sent my final masters in Lisbon and my final masters in London. Just two projects covering renders, covering intellectual property, covering creativity, covering concept design, covering detail. Just two projects that cover everything that you need to know about me, and that's it.
And how was the interview when they gets they invited to some interview
Yeah.
with whom, and how did that go?
So they set the interview with the director of my cluster, which is the competition cluster, and then they set an interview. Also present, there was another director from another cluster in. It was very obvious that I should be concept design and I should be competition. It was obvious. But anyway, they kind of brought two different directors. I was super nervous, but I think I did a very good job before. Like, I even searched on YouTube and I searched everywhere I could how to prepare to an interview. It's important that you know how to breathe, how to articulate, how to calm down your nerves. I was doing everything you could imagine tricks to kind of be like this, like laid back and chill. I think that what really messes you up when you do an interview is your nerves. Everything else is fine, like it's your work, you cannot do anything about it, but you can really mess an interview up with your nerves. So I was kind of like practicing a lot before, even outside of the office. I was like, breathing and like moving my mouth and widening my mouth to kind of articulate better. I read about all the biography from these two directors, so I was kind of prepared, very prepared, to be honest. Very
How
prepared.
how long time did you have between the moment they tell you you're gonna be on an interview and the actual interview?
It was like a week. A
Ah,
week.
okay. So I've changed a couple of times my job, and what I didn't always do research. I am always a very calm person in
Yeah.
stressful situation. I'm always like sort of this before every sort of big colloquium or presentation. I'm a little stressed before, but the
Yeah.
moment I get into the situation, I feel very very okay.
Yeah.
But I want to give my personal suggestion. And apart, if it's a Hadid and you want to really work at that office, is that you have always to think that those people need to want you too, and not only you want the job. Because
Yeah.
I see this job relationship a little bit like a personal relationship. You're gonna be spending a lot of time there and with these people, so you better be yourself and hope that they're gonna like you for who
Yeah.
you are, instead of faking who you are and then creating false expectations.
Yeah.
I guess your interview went very well because you're still working at that office. And
Yeah.
what were your so you said you're in the cluster of competition. So
Hmm.
I'm not familiar with this word clusters in the office. So how is this organization if it's not a secret?
No, no, it's not a secret. It's how a big office is also organizes in different departments, right? So it's not like very big office with a lot of people going around. So it has departments. They call it clusters. So there's cluster one, cluster two, cluster three. Design cluster, which is more for product design. The code cluster, which is more research driven, and then Zaha cluster, which is the cluster that does high end design and competitions. And usually most of the big designs that you see on the web, they came from this cluster. So obviously there are a lot of projects that work as bread and butter, for the company. There are the projects that you don't see them online. They are the bread and butter projects, with very specific clients, and they kind of belong to um, specific clusters. But most of the competitions that require a lot of design, they pass through our cluster. It's a cluster of 40 people or 30 people. We model mostly in Maya. We don't model in Rhino or 3ds Max. We model in Maya. We do concept design, and then we decide on which option to continue based on the client feedback, or based on the plans, or based on a lot of criteria. And then we take that design and we move forward till we submit a competition, which is like, it takes 4 months for a competition to be submitted. uh, Teams of like 5 designers, and then after 4 months you start a new competition, and then they give you 1 day off, and then you start a new competition, and then a day off competition, and so on and so forth. So my job is a bit like getting the brief, coordinating with the other team, the plan team and the section team and the 2D team, and to give 1,000 of different ideas, as many ideas as I can for a specific brief.
But are you the only one that gives the ideas, or you also have like brainstorms with the whole team and
Yeah,
then you all put
it's like
together?
imagine a team of 5 people giving ideas. 3 people actively giving ideas, other two like more like the leads, kind of commenting on the ideas. Let's say that they are expecting 2 options per person, so it's like 6 options in the end that are on the table to be revised, and then we pick one option from those 6 options, and then we move forward with that option.
And you mentioned also like your current role is design directors. So you're the director of one of those teams, I suppose.
No,
Oh,
I'm a senior. I'm not director. So the it's not called director, more like the lead designer is
yeah, lead
yeah.
designer.
There's
Sorry,
a lead designer, and then there's seniors, and then there's designers.
but your first role was just being part of one of those teams.
Yes, as an architectural assistant, they call it
Okay,
assistant.
and then based probably on what ideas you gave along your career there, they saw that you have some feeling for, because I think that the very important skill you have to have in competitions is really have the feeling of the brief and what is gonna
Hmm.
win it. I guess.
True. Yeah, but not everyone has the feeling.
Yeah.
Which
So
is fine. Which is fine because, like, probably your lead has a vision or your director has a vision. So it's also good that you know how to kind of follow what you're told. So even if you don't have a very big feeling, at least you're good at following someone else's, which is it's still valid.
yes, and what it's curious to me now that you mentioned this is Zaha Hadid Architects have this sort of I don't want to. It's sort of like there is this brand line, so to say. Like the
Mm.
you can say different if there are different typologies of buildings that are from Zaha Hadid, but you kind of can say, okay, this building might be from Zaha Hadid. So do you have also like some control from a further level above to keep this line, or it's just
No.
in the inside the philosophy of the office, and everybody have this sort of philosophy also for themselves.
I'm not sure if we see that line on some projects, but not all projects you see that line. And even if you decide to go through the comment section, everyone says this is not Zaha, this is not. But then that's the reality. It's in the office. There's no one telling you this should be more Zaha or less Zaha. You know what I mean? Projects should fit a brief and should fit a client. Sometimes they look more like the Zaha traditional projects. Sometimes they're more boxy, and it's still from Zaha. So it's not like a style that they give you. Quite the opposite. When you join in the beginning, you have zero knowledge of the cliches of Zaha, of how to do the cliches Zaha. So they kind of are very interested to see what you come up with as an original and fresh idea. Even me, like I've been there for 4 years, I really like to see what assistants do because they bring some fresh qualities into it. So after some time, you kind of course, become a bit lazy and do the traditional stuff, which is not super praised, to be honest. They don't like when you are already molded into this style that we call style. But I think people should really understand that there's no style. Although we see some similarities, there's no style because they cannot have a style. It shouldn't even. It's not smart to have a style, right? It should fit a culture, a client, a budget, a program. It fits a lot of other criteria than the style. Sometimes I do cubes. Actually, I do a lot of cubes. They call them pixels. They are just cubes. And they are still Zaha because they came from the office, you know? Yeah.
I Before the podcast started, on the recording form, so to say, we were talking about that you have to keep some secrecy about the projects you're working on, and I'm not gonna ask you about those. But now that I think about it, I've worked here in Frankfurt in an office where I had the luck to see two competition projects of the Hadid because we were the evaluating studio.
Really?
That's
Wow.
and that's gonna be fun if you have done this. You didn't win no
Really? None of them.
none
Oh
of
my
them,
God.
because one competition was the Frankfurt School of Finance,
Hmm.
which Zaha Hadid had presented a project, which was this also kind of crazy canopy that was going. It's a very interesting, and then the Frankfurt Four, that there's four towers,
Hmm.
which then I have seen a similar, like I've seen that project, the layouts for the competition, which then UN Studio won because they had one already, the master plan and everything, and then I saw seen the similar, very very similar design from Zaha for no, I don't know if it was Dubai, but somewhere else, and I'm thinking when you create this. competition ideas, which are not always successful. And I've seen this, for example, Björk Ingels has that said that in many interviews or talks he has given, is that these ideas, they don't die after the
Yeah, of
competition
course.
is finished, but they are like going into a sort of a shelf, and
Yeah,
whenever
exactly.
this idea could work again, you sort of pick it back. So is it a similar?
Yeah, of course. I think it should be like that everywhere in any creative industry that we have. Like it should work like that everywhere. It doesn't make sense that you lose a competition for some criteria that is not even related to the design or to the main principles or behind the project, and that you put it in the cemetery and it dies. I don't think that makes any sense. So Zaha has a lot of unbuilt projects. Like there is a very big discrepancy between the projects that were built and the unbuilt ones. It's crazy the amount of unbuilt projects that they have. My favorite projects are actually part of the unbuilt projects on Praha, and if there's something that I really do actively is to go back to old projects and to take something from them that I think that they should remain and they should come to real life. I have personally a huge cemetery of projects and ideas, like huge, 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 so many ideas that I just bury them under the ground because they didn't make the cut. And I think it's important to kind of bring some features into the present. Of course, like there's no reason to cancel something forever just because he didn't go anywhere. And sometimes even clients, they like a project and then they kind of step back whenever they see the budget, and they were not prepared to pay for this much, so the project dies. How come would we have to kill the project as well, you know? So it's good that it kind of gets recycled, not recycled, but like reinterpreted into something else. It's more than fair, even for the person who had the idea.
Yes, yes, of course.
Yeah.
And I have a little bit of a broken timeline in my head right now, but did you have the luck and opportunity to work with Zahaf, or at least briefly meet her?
So Zaha died on the same year that I was on DRL, like the year before I joined Zaha, she died, and
Oh,
it was a huge hit for me, like personally. Uh, Quite honestly, I even felt like I'm not gonna apply then because I was very focused on getting into Zaha office with Zaha inside, right? So then I decided, okay, she died. I don't even want to be there. I'm sure that one of my goals was to learn from her, like how to behave, how to be, how to move. You know, I don't think that we would get along. Probably she wouldn't even like me, to be honest, because I have a strong character. But it was more like I want to see her from far and understand. Um, to learn from her, like not from her work, but from the way she stands,
yes.
basic. So I kind of lost my interest when she died. But then obviously I thought, no, there's a lot more into that office than just the person behind, and I applied anyway. But it was a huge hit for me. I never met her. I saw her once in Milan. She was presenting, and I never forgot that. When I was looking from top, I was looking at her from the top balcony, and it was like an important moment for me. But I just hear stories, super cool stories. She had a hard personality, super hard personality.
Yeah, I've heard some interviews with her. I was also, I remember the day when I got the news. I was at the bus stop and I was reading the news, and for me was personally, also I never had the aim to work at her office, but I was very much the experience we have had with my dad that day in the Maxi Museum was such a a moment that you remember just from experiencing a building from the work of her office. So you create this connection with this person, even if you never got to meet that person.
Yeah.
And it's funny what you said. What was your goal to get into the office? Because This was so if we take Zaha Hadid, I don't know how many employees has, maybe 100, 200, or maybe less, I don't know. But only these few people which are lucky enough and talented enough are the one that gonna see the inside of this office and how it looks like there. So what I was trying to do now with this podcast is broadcast a little bit of these pieces from the inside,
Hmm.
so people can get inspired, or maybe even if they don't have the opportunity, get like motivated to be their own, I don't know, Zaha Hadid or Mariana or whoever,
Hmm.
so that they know at least in which direction, sort of a guidance, like sparks.
Hmm.
Because of course when you work there for a longer time, you can see the process, learn, because this is what impressed me personally. My first professional experience was that I arrived to Germany after 6 months. I got my first job, and I was like, really, I was in love with this place. I could see how a real architect was working, which for me was, in Italy we have a very complicated economical situation currently. So for us students was very even hard to figure out how to move from the university to
Hmm.
a job, for a real job where you're not underpaid or
Yeah.
really maltreated. And
Same in Portugal. Yeah.
exactly. And when I arrived here and I was like, this is so valuable to see what they're working, how they're
Mhm.
thinking, and you did it on the next level, because I was always thinking I would like to go to work for OMA or Björk Ingels, just to see how do they think there and how do they work there. I think this is the most valuable you
Yeah.
can get. But what is the percentage of people from the AA now in your office, and from the rest of the other university, or from which university are
It's
they?
it's very high. It's very high. Even the directors, they are ex DRL. So Zaha also taught at DAA. Patrick teaches at DAA. So the directors that have been there for like 30 years or for 40 years, the same time that she has been, they are former AAs and former DRLs. Everyone kind of passed through DRL at some point, which is so funny when you're working with people who did DRL 10 years ago and you're like, whoa. That's a very old DRL. So yeah, a lot of people did DRL. A lot of people did the Vienna school. And then I think that it's becoming quite mixed. Some people from Bartlett, but a lot of people from Germany, a lot of people from Germany, a lot of people from Romania, um, because a lot of
From
people from
Germany, where?
I have no idea. They all speak German. They have like this group, this German group.
Okay.
I'm kind of thinking about because we are 400 people, so I
Ah,
don't know
okay.
like everyone, but I'm thinking about what's the language that you hear the most. So the language that you hear the most is German, Romanian. Not a lot of British people, Spanish a bit, but when I say Spanish, like South Americans and some Spanish people as well from Spain. Um, what else? And I think it's also quite mixed. India, there's also a lot of people from India. It's quite mixed though. Asia as well, like China, some people from China. Yeah, it's really really mixed. Of course, I think DRL is still the school that people have the most in common, even coming from different countries. I think DRL is the most common school, and
Yeah.
DAA.
And how did you get the opportunity to teach to go back at the AA now as a teacher? And how was the feeling after you were thinking you weren't even prepared to get into the school,
Yeah.
now being someone that teaches people in that school?
Uh, I think, like, to be very honest with you, it was kind of an arrogant move. It still is, to be fair. So when I did DRL, before I joined DRL and I saw the DRL presentations, I thought I'm a lot of things that they are saying are out of my depth. Like they're really far from what I think, and I need to kind of catch with them, like to keep up with them. There are other things that I think that they don't know and that they are not teaching and they should be teaching. So I had this feeling of you need me, but I need you, but you also need me. And I kept this alive until even when I finished RL. I thought I have a contribution for this place. I still think I have a bigger contribution than what I'm giving. It's really up to my director to take that or not. So I finished and I thought there is a big contribution to give to this course. I think I can really help. I think there are a lot of topics that are not being covered. I think that also, to be very fair, gender inequality at the DRL is huge, is unexplainable. And it's not because we need diversity for the sake of diversity, but we do need diversity because some people relate more to other people. You do need a gender, a male idea and a male point of view, and a female point of view, and a non-gender point of view. You need diversity. And the RL is very male driven still. You can tell by the final projects, you can tell by a lot of things. And I was really confident that you need me, and I still think you need me. I'm, and then I was kind of pushing, like, get me to teach, get me to teach. I need to be teaching there. And they said, okay, maybe you can teach the software. I was like, cool, okay, I can start with the software. Let's see where this leads me after. And I am still a software teacher. I think that maybe one day they will actually get me for something else. But well, I've been teaching the software for 4 years, and I get involved with the students and the students project, which is good. I tell them my input on the project, which is usually beneficial. And yeah, and that's why I've been teaching at the AA. Let's see if they take me on board for something more interesting than the software.
I can say that my impression is that you say it was a little bit. How did you say your move
Arrogant.
was arrogant? I don't think you're arrogant. I from the our conversation so far, I have the impression you have this very strong character for sure, but you are not arrogant. You put your powerful character in service of your ideas, and like you sort of have the energy to put, so to say, your body for your ideas. This is what I feel, because
Yeah.
I was also impressed. Maybe in the Futurely promotion, there was somewhere mentioned that you are a designer at Zaha Hadid, and that you're this teacher at the AA or professor at the AA. I don't know. I'm sorry if I have said the wrong word.
Yeah.
But I was also impressed. Like, okay, I'm I'm used to deal with, when I was in Rome, with my professors would cover also some very important roles. Like, I had a professor who was the basically the main architect of the Vatican City, and they would have these roles, and through this role feel very important. And you have an important role, but still you also get part in projects like Futurely, which is, I guess, from what I know, more accessible for more people than the
Very
AA.
accessible. Yeah.
So for me, it was very, also this was another, you what really made me curious to know you and to have the opportunity to talk to you. It was not that much that you work at Zaha did, but all this idea that I got from you, because it was so multi diverse and was very very interesting. And I forgot to ask you, when did you move to England, and still now, was there any cultural shock you experienced? Because a part of being a designer, an architect, you're always a person,
Yeah.
like in your
I
daily
think,
life.
to be very practical, like the cost of living is so much higher. I think it's a real shock. So there's no very big cultural shock in any other subject. I think that money wise and the cost of everything, it is a shock, and you struggle for very long until you learn how to. Create, to have your own economics, and to have your savings. I think you'll learn how to save very late in London. Like, I especially, I don't know, like 5 years or 4 years after living in London, I learned how to save money. It's really hard, and it's very unexpected. Everything is unexpectedly high priced. Even the coffee is unexpectedly high priced. So that was my first very big shock, was money wise. And like, to be honest, sometimes I couldn't, like, my parents were giving me money, I was not asking for more money because I was a student, right? But I remember I never told them that I had £2 for 2 weeks, and to live with £2, it's insane. Like, I was having this instant noodle for dinner every day because it was like 90p, or I was buying Indian food from the supermarket already done because it was like £1. I think that was the biggest shock in the beginning. And even like when you join the office, your salary is not high or medium, it's actually low. So my salary was a low salary for very long, and I was also like still living with a very low sources. Like, I still cook my lunch and my dinner every Sunday, so I don't have to eat out. Um, so yeah, I think that was the biggest shock. To be very fair, the rest is fine. The rest is okay.
Is there a moment in the career at Zaha Hadid Architects where your value it's suddenly higher than the value
I,
that being at the office is there and they pay you higher?
I always wonder that. That could
Because
be an email from me to the HR. Hi, is there a moment in life where I'm gonna be like overvalued in money? I heard that when you get to lead, you are more comfortable.
Hmm.
Um,
Because I when I wanted to join one of these offices, I was still fresh and maybe almost finishing university, and I think now my life changed too much to say, okay, I'm gonna now accept to, because whether you like it or not, I guess that's everywhere. Whether it's OMA or another office, um, the value that the office gives you just for have worked there, it sort of, in my opinion,
yeah,
maybe empowers them to tell you, okay, you're working here at the leading office in the world, so you have to accept a little bit
yeah,
lower pay. And I don't know if that's fair, because also you have spent so much money on AA and you have skills which basically not a lot of people have. And
yeah.
that sounds to me a little, um yeah, I don't agree with it. If I ever had the power
I agree.
to lead an office, I would rather lower slightly my earnings to make
Yeah,
people as happy as possible. And through
I
teaching,
agree. It's a fragile subject.
yes, I'm not gonna ask you because I'm giving my opinions on this subject because you work for the firm, so I don't want I don't want to push you have a strong character before you start
Ah,
talking.
no, but
Don't
it's fine. No, but you can ask. For example, I always ask for a raise on any review that I have. We have annual reviews. Some
yeah.
people ask for raises, some people don't ask for raises. I think that you have to ask for raises. There's no reason for any director or any office in the world to raise you without you asking. Why would they give you money if you don't ask? Like, to be very fair, but that's just my opinion. Some people don't really ask and they get the raise anyway. I think that you should always ask. Always ask. Your annual review shouldn't be the most comfortable flower moment in your life. No, that's the tough moment. It's the moment that you say, hey, okay, this was fun, but okay, I need this and I want this number. That's just my personal opinion. I think people have very different opinions about this.
I like the way you think. I
Yeah.
agree with you.
Yeah.
Um, and teaching, you teach the A, and then you teach another workshops. Although you're teaching, you said it like it's funny also because you said you were weak at softwares when you got into the A, and now you teach a
Yeah.
software. But is
Right.
this Yes, you've that shows how tough you are, I think, and I'm saying this really out of. I today is the first day I got to talk to you, so I wouldn't have any reason to say it. But
Yeah.
to me, shows a lot of toughness
I
because
know.
your weak points now are strong points. um, although you're teaching just the software, which is also very complex software, is the whole process and the ideas that you see from the students keeps you also a lot of keeps you fresh into then
Of
your
course.
personal,
Yes.
because I think when you're teaching somebody, there
Yeah.
I have this, students. I don't know what kind of you still teach at the A. Some students that have a master degree, I guess, in architecture, but they have a little bit more purity, like braveness, or they're
For
really.
sure. Yeah, for sure.
So how
I'm
does
gonna
that
be honest.
transition?
I think that what drives me to teach is one, I feel the responsibility of giving my knowledge away. Two, of course, the money that comes with teaching and the experience that you have should be monetized. And then three, definitely the biggest reward is to see what you interpret from what I told you. And that keeps me like my creativity and my brain very much alive. I don't think students are even aware because they cannot do exactly like you did, so they feel that they kind of failed, but it's the exact opposite. Like what they are giving me is way better than what I did in my head, right? So it gives me like a lot of new ideas, new ways of seeing things. So that's another way of reason why I want to be attached to the AI so much, because it really keeps my brain so busy and so entertained with something completely different. I lose track of time when I'm teaching usually, because you're like transported to another dimension, some dimension that someone created. So that's also one of the reasons why I like to teach.
And how do you balance work and teaching? What is the amount of time that one and the other? How do you put them
Yeah,
together?
I think that's really crazy. That's the only thing that I would say that it's a bit crazy in my life right now, is how I'm managing this. And that's also why I'm a bit different from the traditional employee, or I'm a bit different from the traditional person who teaches workshops lives, right? Because I do both. And I've been learning a lot of lessons from this in the last year. I usually like to take myself to the extreme to see how far I can go, and when I see that I'm starting to fail, I go back. Right. So last year I was doing my office work. I of course I work a lot for the office, and I always give my best, or most of the times I try to give my best. And then I was teaching live. I was doing a competition with friends, and I was feeding my Instagram with new content for design. So it was a lot. And when I reached this moment, I was kind of doing office. At lunchtime, I was doing preparing classes for the live. I would turn off my computer at 8 p.m. and turn on my new Maya file for other classes for the competition that I was doing. So I was multitasking like three projects in a day. I was juggling three projects every day, and that kind of, I think that was the extreme. And then I saw me kind of giving less to the office, and that was very scary because my contract is for with the office. So I quite honestly saw me kind of failing to the office and putting office as plan B and giving my average, just what they asked me, so I could survive on the other fields. So I kind of stood a little bit back and said, okay, I can only do one live workshop and office at the same time. I cannot be involved on anything else. So right now I'm kind of juggling that. I'm teaching live, doing DAA, which is already a lot, and doing office. And it's crazy, to be honest. I think I cannot keep this rhythm forever. To be fair, sometimes I really think like, okay, this will have a limit as well. There's no way I
And
can keep this rhythm.
you have to squeeze in some personal life, I guess, because you said
Yeah.
also you have a relationship. I don't know if you're
Yes.
a lot of people have in the architectural field have
A bad social life, non-existent
no
social.
no have a partner which is also an architect, so they can be all both
Yeah.
like focus on the same subject.
Hmm.
This is the thing. And is there any like routine you have to, I don't know, sport or something to keep yourself powered up, pumped up?
Yeah.
What do you practice?
Yeah, for sure. I really, really believe in routines. I think routines are really powerful. They sound monotonous, they sound boring. I think routines are, in discipline for me is like number one. priority, is to have discipline and to have a routine. It sounds boring, but I think it's really what gets you going. I have things well planned, well organized. Of course, I have space for surprises and for, I don't know, something else that comes. But for me, it's important to include on my routine work for office, work for something else than office, work out, have my boyfriend and my family. And this is my daily routine. I'm very lucky that I have a very tolerant boyfriend. He's not an architect, but he is like a special kind of person. I'm very lucky to have him and to kind of like right now I am like closed in the living room and he's outside for the last 2 hours so he wouldn't make any noise and he's very tolerant, you know. So I'm very lucky for that. Not everyone is lucky enough to find someone like that. But yeah, working out is also something that for me is major. I have like a small gym at home. I do a lot of heavy lifting. Working out for me is super important. Super important. So yeah, for me, routines is number one recipe for success.
That's I have to work on that lately because I was used to work out more before the pandemics, and then I kind of like dropped it. But I'm
Yeah.
going back in the path. So yeah, I think we have covered a lot. I don't want to keep you away for you from your boyfriend and keep him away from the living room any further on. We can conclude with I am trying to conclude the interviews now with something new. So I ask everybody if you have something for you personal that's very inspirational, like a movie, a book, a song, or maybe even a place where you go to or where you love to go, or something that you enjoy. Is there something like that that's you keep it in your heart?
Oh, that's a hard one. Um, this might sound very dry, but I'm not. I don't really see. How can I say this without being too dry? I don't see a very big need for people to seek for inspiration. I think that usually what you see that looks so inspiring actually came from a lot of work and a lot of hours and more perspiration and transpiration than actually inspiration. So I don't look for any book or a place to get inspired. Usually my best work comes from a lot of hours of insisting on something. So I would say non-inspiration is the best kind of inspiration.
Discipline.
Discipline.
Perfect. I like your answer because every guest needs to be themselves and needs to give
Yeah.
their own message. So I like this message. So before we conclude, really, you can say where people can find you on online, or where can they find more about you, and so that they can now see the face of Mariana.
So I am on Instagram. It's at Mariana Cabugueira, and that's the only place where I'm at. I don't have Facebook, so that's it.
Okay,
Instagram.
we're gonna put a link in the description of the podcast. So thank you, Mariana. It was very nice
Thank
talking
you
to
so
you.
much.
And yeah,
Really nice. Yeah, went super fast.
I told you.
Yeah, you're right.
So have a good evening, and hope to talk to you soon.
You too. Bye.
Bye bye.
The whole world stops just like that.
Hey guys, thank you very much for listening this episode. And before we go, I want to remind you that if you want to support this podcast and our show, you can do it by just subscribing to our monthly newsletter, where you're going to receive the best of every month. And you can follow our social media channels, which are Instagram at TCI Podcast and LinkedIn, the Creative Insider page. Thank you very much and have a good week.
just like that.